quite big. Oh, it's cut off there, Marcus.
I got it.
No.
I don't know why. There we go.
Okay, it just goes a little bit smaller on that screen. Is anyone looking at that screen? Some of you, you're not really looking at the screen very much. You're looking at me more, right? Right. Okay. Good. Okay, so golf soccer. You guys heard a little bit about me in the club earlier. So we are working on a She's Got Game, She Can Coach project. This project's really neat because it's federally funded through Sport Canada's Innovation Initiative. So for all of those that are like, resources, how do I do this? Make that note. Innovation Initiative, Sport Canada. So last year's round of funding was specifically designated to initiatives for women and girls in sport. Obviously it's Sport Canada, so it's all sport, whereas like, I'm not sure what the equivalent of Ontario Trillium would be. Where did Dave go? He left. What's the equivalent of, not wrong Dave, sorry, Dave Nutt. But you probably have an equivalent of Ontario Trillium. So Ontario Trillium is fantastic because it's sports community organizations, but it's not sport specific. Sport Canada is incredible because the funding is sport specific. So it's federally funded through Sport Canada's Innovation Initiative. It's a 3-year project. So we've got a little bit of a runway in terms of we don't have to share results immediately and have something happen tomorrow. So there's a ton of planning involved. And essentially we're trying to test the hypothesis of if we can decrease the barriers of entry for women to coach, then we can increase female registration and eliminate the gender gap in participation. So the hypothesis really being that we believe the lead domino is female coaching, not more inclusive programming at the programming level. We believe that will come, but the lead domino is the female coaching. So that's the hypothesis we're trying to test. The project's pretty big. It's a $200,000 grant over the course of 3 years. And I'm a firm believer if you're gonna go after funding, it's pretty prescriptive. So make sure you ask for what you actually need versus what you think you could do it with. So that's like a grant lesson that I'll share, because we as people that are scarce on resources, we typically try to scale it back and shrink it down and say, well, I could probably do it with only one part-time staff. So what's incredible about the program is we have $25,000 over the course of the 3 years designated specifically to research. So we're working with the research team at the University of Toronto to track the progress of the project. So we're not researchers, we're a soccer club, right? We don't do that, so we had to outsource that. So that's an incredible piece of it. So how does it work and how are we gonna do it? So right now we've got our first cohort. We'll do 2 years of cohorts, and then in the 3rd year it's a sort of a wrap up and measurement year, because the data tracking in the last year is really about, did we actually move the gender participation gap? So we have 55 coaches that have put their hands up and said, this sounds cool, I wanna be part of it. And basically we're doing everything we can to reduce the barriers for them to coach. So what does that look like? No fees for certification. So there's no cost barrier, so make it as accessible as possible. Childcare everywhere and anywhere. So we offer a free women's league because women should play it. What's fantastic about Saskatchewan is that like you do everything as women, right? Like you play, you coach, you are board members. That's not often the case in Ontario. So we want to make sure that the women that are coaching are also falling in love with the game by playing, but to encourage women to play, we know that they've got priorities at home, right? Men have priorities at home too, but that's a really big barrier for women. So we offer concurrent childcare to our women's program. And then we offer a support network. So we call them monthly coach huddles, where all of our women to get together. And Kristina will talk a little bit later about the importance of sense of belonging, inclusion, connection, social. If we're not benefiting from this in some other way beyond just my ability to give back, we're probably not gonna stick around as women, right? There has to be more to it for us. We have to want to belong, and these have to be our peers. So it's really about building that social connection. And what's been fantastic about our monthly coach huddles is that the women are really getting to know each other. They play in the league on Sunday. Their kids are starting to get to know each other, which is fantastic. They're learning a ton. They're going through their coach certification process now. And then they get all sorts of free swag because you gotta walk around in it to feel like you belong, right? And so what you can see me wearing today, it says I've got her back. So part of the project is we strategically partnered with the University of Guelph and their She's Got Game project. So as an organization, we do have a partnership with the University of Guelph, but we've partnered specifically with their She's Got Game project to use their brand because it's a brand that's well recognized in our community. And there's an apparel provider that provides all this cool swag. So part of it is the women will get some swag because that's really important. And so they get all these gets, and then their give is they just have to coach with us. That's it. So we've removed all the barriers. We've hopefully made it as simple as possible, and your give back is to coach with us. And so we've talked a lot about other projects where, you know, people are trying to take, in Saskatchewan it's really interesting because there's a lot of you women that are certified and trained, and now the next goal is how do you go from here to here, right? Our project is really talking about how we get moms off the sideline. How do we get girls that are currently playing transitioning into coaches? So people that aren't currently coaching is predominantly our target. And so we've now got 55 new women coaching in our programs, and over the course of 2 years, hopefully 55 times 2 when we do cohort 2, our hope is that organically what we see is the number of girls in our participation rate grows, because our prediction, our hypothesis is that the lead domino is the women and the coaching. So our title on our partner, so She's Got Game, She Can Coach. I talked a little bit about the University of Guelph and the use of their brand. Our target population, it says 16 to 40, but we're not ageist. If you want to coach with us, if you want to learn, come on in. It was designated specifically for the city of Guelph, but we definitely had some neighboring communities that had female coaches that were really interested. And initially we said, well, you've got to coach in our program, but as an organization and a really strong community organization, we believe what's good for soccer in Guelph is good for soccer everywhere. What's good for soccer somewhere else is also good for soccer in Guelph. Like, a rising tide rises all boats, right? That's the quote. And so it's not about us. It's about how we can change the landscape of the game. And so, yeah, we have people that aren't from the city of Guelph that are participating in our She's Got Game, She Can Coach project, aren't going to do their give back, but it's women that are learning. And why take that opportunity away? And there's no real age limit, even though that was originally part of the project ask. And then really the project description is addressing the specific barriers to coaching as identified by women to increase female sport participation. So it's huge and it's really iterative. And that's like my favorite word, because I'm like, we do something today that we learn from, and then we change it tomorrow, and we have to adapt and learn and grow and try something different. And it's been an incredible journey. So we're about 6 months into cohort 1, 2.5 years to go. I can't wait to come back to Saskatchewan and tell you guys whether we've moved the needle, whether there's been a difference. But I want to share with you that there's funding available and lots of it. And so I have this strong belief of, if you've got a really good idea, there's funding out there in order to implement it. So don't shy away from that. If you want to do cool things, you can do cool things. I'm going to hand it off to Kristina now, so she can talk a little bit about her experiences.
Where Sarah's project is absolutely massive, I wanted to share some of the smaller things that happened a little bit more organically at our club. And I think the reason it happened more organically was because we had a female lead. We also had a full-time female technical staff leading our 4 to 7 program. But I wanted to share some things just to give you some ideas of maybe what you can take back to your clubs. We ran a Future Leaders program. I think most clubs these days do run some sort of transition program from player to coach. This program was, there was some theory, in-classroom theory sessions, and then the candidates moved on to some mentorship opportunity. They were able to choose who they mentored with out of the full-time staff so that they were comfortable in that environment. And from there they went on to coach in pairs in our 4 to 7 program, sometimes in our 8 to 12 program, depending on what their niche was. We insisted that we had 50% girls participating in this program in order to run it. And out of the 5 years I was there when it ran, we were at 55% girls and 45% boys, which just meant an influx of females transitioning to coaching were coming into our club and becoming comfortable in that environment. So that for me was a simple project. We had a lead, who oversaw the program. And then typically the girls coming out of that program would work with myself or the other female lead. Occasionally they would choose someone else to work with, and I tried not to take it personally. Scheduling accommodations. We worked hard at this. We asked our female coaches when they wanted their sessions to be scheduled, on what days, if they wanted back-to-back sessions, if they were working 2 teams. We worked hard to schedule friends, or those we knew were friends or got along well together, side by side, so that they could support one another. And if they weren't available, they can actually take both of the programs and run it, so there's some flexibility if something came up in the day. This was probably one of the most popular things we did, and then we extended it to everybody in our club. So we really tried, and our club is 7,500 members. So doing this was quite a project, but it was important that the schedule worked, especially for our female coaches. We ran socials, so we had somewhat similar to Sara's league. We would invite all our female coaches in. We'd have a game and then a drink afterwards. I was telling Sara yesterday, I've left the club. I've been gone for almost a year now, and we're still getting together for those games. We're still supporting each other. We're still asking each other questions. We're still attending each other's sessions and games to support one another, and that piece, we've bonded as friends, and it keeps everybody engaged in the sport, because we look forward to seeing one another, and we look forward to supporting each other and helping one another move through our progressions in our coaching careers. We ran it says women's mentorship here. We didn't actually run a women's mentorship. We ran a mentorship program for women through our mentorship program. We asked our women to design what that would look like. What did they want to accomplish out of the mentorship program, who they wanted to run their mentorship, so they were able to select their mentor coaches. The different aspects of that course, we worked out with in conjunction with the women. And again, it was another important piece to ensuring that everybody felt comfortable in that environment. And then finally, support. I don't know how the culture is here, but one of the complaints I heard most often were from the ambitious dads in my competitive program, saying that my female coaches weren't competitive enough, or didn't drive the kids enough, or weren't critiquing the kids enough, and it seemed to be exclusive to our female coaches, those complaints. So working hard to take that pressure off, that parent pressure, set the expectations and set the culture and change the culture in our organization was a massive undertaking. Explaining to people why we're here, that it's a game, and that first and foremost, we want everybody to be enjoying themselves on the field. Then talking about development and what that looks like at each age and stage of development. So we spent a lot of time as a staff taking that off our coaches in order to allow them just to focus on the on-field side of their position in the club. So nothing that can't be done. These were all things that just kind of happened organically, as I said. And by the time I left, we had 46% of our hired coaches were female coaches. Every single age group on the girls' side had a female coach involved with their program. So it wasn't as massive of a project. I'm really interested in looking forward to seeing the results of Sara's project over in Guelph, but definitely some things you could take home and implement at your club.
So we're going to jump into Q&A, but the one thing I want to address that maybe we haven't really touched on as we stood up here is you guys might be looking at us and going, well, you're women and you both have a platform, right? I'm a woman and I don't have a platform. Or I'm a man with a platform and I don't know what to do. We need all of us to be moving this needle forward, right? I'm currently embarking on this journey of really figuring out how to engage newcomers into our organization. And I'm having really uncomfortable conversations because I don't know what the right things to say are. But I'm asking questions and I'm learning a lot. So for those that may be uncomfortable having conversations about gender equity because you don't know, right? You don't have the lived experience, ask questions, right? Your female counterparts want you desperately to ask the questions. If you have a platform, you have the opportunity to change the landscape of soccer, grow our participation, and really make a difference. If you're a woman that is struggling to move forward, feeling a lack of support, maybe what Kristina and I can offer you today is allyship, support, a friend. So we're here. And so this is definitely something that we're going to continue to tackle, right? Gender equity is not easy. Equity is not easy. But we're really glad to have been here today. So thanks for sitting here, listening to us. We're going to take a couple minutes and do some Q&A. It sounds like Eden's put some post-it notes on your table if you're not comfortable asking the question out loud. But we hope you've got questions for us because while we don't have all the answers, we might have resources available for you guys on where to get the answers you need.
I don't need a mic at all.
Okay, so you kind of discussed like how 46% of your hire coaches were females. I know what I found a lot through working with multiple clubs and I started out young and in the grassroots sector, but I find that a lot of the female coaches are grassroots coaches and not higher level coaches. So with that, what would kind of be your advice in getting them out of grassroots and into higher level?
Yeah, I actually that's something that we struggled with because most of our hired coaches were also grassroots coaches, and very few women worked in our OPDL, which is our high performance stream. We were just starting to try to figure out a plan forward there. A piece that did help was Ontario Soccer mandated that either the head coach or the assistant coach of each female high performance team had to be a woman. Now I don't think they really followed through on ensuring that was happening, but it kind of forced our hand to start developing a pathway to move those coaches out. So what we started to do was started just the conversation with our coaches who aspired to work at those levels of the game, and then we put a mentorship program together where they would go into the environment and assist to start, and then we'd also support them through their licensing process. And I found often a lot of women didn't want to go through that process. It was scary. I know when I first started going through my licensing, it was horrendous. Sorry, Dave, but it was terrifying. Like there was full-grown men crying on the side of the field. Like we were ripped apart, and ensuring that people knew that it was totally different now and like a development setting and really supportive. I mean, it's hard to change the reputation. So that's something that we also had to work on and just build the confidence of our coaches to go in. We never asked them to commit to the assessment process. We asked them to commit to the course first, to give them that flexibility. And I'm sorry I don't have a full answer for you, but it was definitely something that we were still struggling with when I left.
Sure. Thank you.
So thank you first for coming. You had mentioned that Ontario Soccer had mandated that at least an assistant coach or a coach had to be female for that stream. And then you went on to say you weren't sure if that was being followed through. Do you think there is benefit in having governance policy to push that forward? Or do you think that that's something that club levels are going to need to be more responsible for?
Yeah, for me personally, I think there is benefit as long as there's a timeline that is appropriate to allow you to develop the coach properly in order for them to have success once they get into that environment, which Ontario Soccer did do. Like, we were given a few years heads up that was coming out, and it was going to start at the U13 level and then build out from there. And then of course COVID hit, and all the excuses it flew out, and I don't know where they stand now. Do you know?
So I can't answer where they stand now, but the only thing I'll add is that we're talking about the deliverable again, right, instead of the vision. And so what's the vision? And so does the provincial sport organization have a vision? Does the club have a vision? And they probably both need one, right? So your question was like, where does it start and who should be doing it? If we want the work to be done, everyone should probably be doing it, right? This is a collective effort. And imagine how much easier the work is gonna feel when we are talking to the club next door and they're also working on it, or we're talking to our provincial sport organization and they're also driving it forward. So it's not really where should it start or whose responsibility, it's is there a vision, what is it? And then there's gotta be some joint collective responsibility. Ian and I had a fun conversation last night about referees, because we're like, there's a crisis coming. There's a shortage for sure, but there's this collective responsibility with something like that as well, right? There's not one answer really. It's a good question though.
Hi, I'm just going to build on your topic of building that connection. And I know that opportunity of connection is such a huge piece. Is there a forum, or is there something that connects one side of Canada to the other? I know that being in Saskatchewan, we are limited to, Alberta, Manitoba. It's quite a large distance between, and then we've got out east, and we've got everywhere, and it's hard to connect. So is there somewhere where, a year-round, like a yearly gathering or connection piece where we can all just get online, or go somewhere and see something and connect that way?